I was sitting on my back patio in Phoenix, Arizona, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple when I heard the unmistakable sound of splashing coming from my pool. The problem was I wasn't in the pool, neither was anyone I knew. My name is Ryan Valerio, and I had just discovered that someone was using my private swimming pool without permission on a Tuesday evening in June. I stood up from my chair and walked toward the fence that separated my backyard from the community walkway. Through the gaps in the wood, I could see 4 people I'd never met before, laughing and throwing a beach ball around in my pool. 2 couples, probably in their 30s, were having the time of their lives while I stood there confused and increasingly angry. I walked around to the gate that led to my pool area. It was still locked, which meant whoever these people were, they had the code. I only gave that code to 3 people: my brother Marcus, my best friend from college Devin, and my girlfriend Lisa. None of them would have given it out to strangers. I punched in the code and opened the gate. The 4 strangers turned to look at me, their smiles fading slightly but not disappearing entirely. "Hey there," one of the men called out, waving at me like we were old friends. "Great pool you've got here. Thanks for letting us use it." I stared at him, my jaw tight. "I didn't let you use it. Who told you that you could be here?" The other man, a guy with a receding hairline and a beer belly, looked confused. "Wait, aren't you friends with Brenda? She told us we could use her friend's pool while we're visiting. We're from Tucson, and she said it would be no problem." "I don't know anyone named Brenda," I said firmly. "You need to get out now." The women in the pool exchanged glances. One of them, a blonde with oversized sunglasses, said, "Brenda Hawthorne? She lives in that big house 3 doors down. She's on the HOA board." My blood went cold. Brenda Hawthorne. I knew exactly who that was. She was the HOA vice president, a woman in her late 40s who had made it her personal mission to police every single aspect of our neighborhood since I'd moved in 8 months ago. She'd already sent me 2 violation notices, one because my garbage can was visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup, and another because I'd planted roses instead of desert-appropriate landscaping in my front yard. "Brenda gave you my pool code?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Yeah," the man with the beer belly said, looking nervous now. "She said you wouldn't mind. We're her guests from Tucson. We're staying with her for a few days." I pulled out my phone and took a photo of all 4 of them. "Get out of my pool right now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." They scrambled out of the water, grabbing their things and muttering apologies. I watched them leave, dripping water all over my deck as they hurried out the gate. As soon as they were gone, I locked the gate behind them and immediately went to my pool control panel. I changed the access code from 4792 to something completely random that I'd have to write down to remember. Then I called Lisa. She answered on the second ring. "Hey babe, what's up? Did you give anyone my pool code?" I asked without preamble. "What? No, of course not. Why?" I explained what had just happened. Lisa was furious on my behalf, which made me feel slightly better, but it didn't change the fact that Brenda Hawthorne had somehow gotten my private pool code and had given it to her guests without asking me. "You need to confront her," Lisa said. "That's completely unacceptable. It's your property." "Oh, I plan to," I said, "tomorrow morning," but I didn't have to wait until morning. 20 minutes after I'd kicked the tourists out of my pool, there was an aggressive knock on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Brenda Hawthorne standing there, her face red with anger. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit despite the fact that it was almost 7 in the evening, and her short brown hair was styled in what I could only describe as a speak-to-the-manager cut. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" "You just humiliated my guests," she shouted, not even bothering with a greeting. "They came back to my house dripping wet and embarrassed, saying you threatened to call the police on them." I leaned against my doorframe, crossing my arms. "They were trespassing on my property, Brenda. How did they get my pool code?" She had the audacity to look offended. I gave it to them. "They're visiting from out of town and it's hot. I thought it would be neighborly to let them use the pool." "My pool," I said slowly, emphasizing each word. "My private property. You had no right to give anyone my access code." "It's community property," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "We all share amenities in this neighborhood." "No, Brenda. The community center has a pool. That's community property. My pool in my backyard, behind my fence, is not community property. It's mine." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being very unneighborly, Ryan. This is exactly the kind of attitude that makes people dislike living in HOA communities. We're supposed to help each other out." "Helping each other out would be asking me first," I said, "not stealing my pool code and handing it out to strangers." "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice going shrill. "I'm on the HOA board. I have access to certain information for safety reasons." That made me pause. "How did you get my pool code?" She looked uncomfortable for the first time. "The HOA has access to security codes for emergencies." I felt my face getting hot. "So you abused your position on the HOA board to access my private security information, and then you gave it to people for recreation. Do you understand how illegal that is? Don't threaten me, she said, pointing her finger at my chest. I have the authority to make your life very difficult in this neighborhood. I can fine you for every little violation. I can make sure every single thing you do is scrutinized. Get off my property, I said, stepping back and starting to close the door. And if you or anyone you know comes near my pool again without my explicit permission, I will call the police. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I closed the door in her face. Through the wood, I could hear her sputtering with indignation before her footsteps finally retreated down my walkway. I immediately called the HOA management company. It was after hours, so I left a detailed voicemail explaining what had happened and requesting an immediate meeting with someone in charge. Then I changed every single security code on my property: the pool, the back gate, the garage, and my front door smart lock. If Brenda had access to one code, she might have access to all of them. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about strangers in my pool, about Brenda's entitled attitude, about the fact that someone I didn't know or trust had access to my private security information. When morning came, I was exhausted and angry. I got a call at 8:30 from the HOA management company. A woman named Patricia told me she'd received my message and wanted to schedule a meeting. I told her I wanted it as soon as possible. She said she could do 11 that morning at the community center. I showed up 10 minutes early. Patricia was already there, a professional-looking woman in her 50s with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She shook my hand and gestured for me to sit down at one of the tables in the community room. Tell me exactly what happened, she said, pulling out a notepad. I explained everything: the strangers in my pool, Brenda admitting she'd given them my code, her claim that the HOA had access to security codes for emergencies. Patricia's expression grew more concerned as I spoke. That's a serious violation, she said when I finished. The HOA does have emergency contact information on file, but personal security codes are not something we collect or store. If Mrs. Hawthorne has your pool code, she obtained it through some other means. She said she had access to it through the HOA, I said. Patricia shook her head. That's not possible through official channels. I'll need to investigate this immediately. Do you have any idea how she might have gotten it? I thought about it. The only people I've given the code to are my brother, my girlfriend, and a friend from college. None of them would have given it to Brenda. Did you ever have work done on the pool? Any service people who might have had access? I nodded slowly. I had the pool maintenance company come out about a month ago. They needed the code to get into the pool area. Patricia wrote something down. What company? Desert Oasis Pool Service, I said. I'll look into it, she said. In the meantime, I want to assure you that what Mrs. Hawthorne did was completely inappropriate. Even if she had somehow legitimately obtained your code, giving it to other people without your permission is a violation of your privacy and potentially your property rights. What happens now? I asked. I'm going to schedule an emergency board meeting, Patricia said. Mrs. Hawthorne will need to answer for her actions. I'll also be reviewing what information she has access to and whether she's abused her position in other ways. I left the community center feeling slightly better but still on edge. As I walked back to my house, I saw Brenda in her front yard, watering her perfectly manicured desert landscaping. She saw me and turned off her hose. I hope you're happy, she called out. You've made a formal complaint about a simple misunderstanding. I stopped walking and turned to face her fully. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Brenda. You violated my privacy and gave strangers access to my property. That's not neighborly. That's illegal. You're being dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. Nobody was hurt. They just wanted to swim. They could have asked me themselves, I said. You could have asked me. The fact that you didn't tells me you knew it was wrong. She walked closer to the fence that separated her yard from the sidewalk. You know what your problem is, Ryan? You're selfish. You have this beautiful pool, and you won't share it. In a community like this, we're supposed to look out for each other. Looking out for each other doesn't mean I have to let anyone who wants to use my pool, I said. You have a hot tub. Should I just come over and use it whenever I want? That's different, she said quickly. How? She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she said, the board is going to hear about your attitude. You're not exactly setting a good example for the neighborhood. The board is going to hear a lot of things, I said, including how you abused your position to access my private information. Her face went pale, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. I walked away before she could respond, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. Over the next few days, things escalated. I received a violation notice in my mailbox claiming that my backyard fence was 6 inches taller than the HOA allowed. I measured it myself. It was exactly the height specified in the HOA guidelines. Then I got another notice saying my house number wasn't visible enough from the street. I'd just replaced those numbers 3 months ago with ones that were oversized and reflective. It was clear that Brenda was retaliating. I documented everything, took photos, made notes of the dates and times. I also set up a camera pointing at my pool gate. If she or anyone she knew tried to access my pool again, I'd have video evidence. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening. Patricia called me the day before to let me know. I've done some investigating, she said. It appears that Mrs. Hawthorne called Desert Oasis Pool Service pretending to be your wife, claiming she needed the pool code because she'd forgotten it. The office manager gave it to her. I felt a mix of anger and vindication, so she committed fraud. That's certainly one way to look at it, Patricia said carefully. The board will be addressing this tomorrow night. I'd like you to be there to give your account of what happened. I'll be there, I said. That evening, Lisa came over. She'd been supportive throughout this entire ordeal, but I could tell she was worried about how much it was affecting me. You seem stressed, she said, sitting down next to me on the couch. I am stressed, I admitted. I just wanted to live in a nice neighborhood and enjoy my house. Instead, I'm dealing with someone who thinks she has the right to do whatever she wants with my property. You're doing the right thing by standing up to her, Lisa said. People like Brenda get away with this stuff because nobody calls them out on it. I know, I said, but it's exhausting. She leaned her head on my shoulder. It'll be over soon. The board meeting is tomorrow. But it wasn't over soon. In fact, it was just getting started. The next evening, I walked into the community center for the board meeting. There were about 15 people there, the 5 board members, Patricia from the management company, a few residents who were apparently there for other reasons, and me. Brenda was sitting at the head table with the other board members, looking smug. Patricia called the meeting to order and quickly moved through some routine business before getting to what she called a matter of community concern. We've received a complaint regarding a potential abuse of HOA access to private resident information, Patricia said, looking directly at Brenda. Mr. Valerio, would you please explain what happened? I stood up and told the whole story again. Several of the other board members looked shocked. One of them, an older man named Douglas, kept shaking his head in disbelief. When I finished, Brenda immediately started talking. This is all being blown way out of proportion, she said. I had guests from out of town. It was hot. I knew Ryan had a pool and I thought he wouldn't mind sharing. It's called being neighborly. But you didn't ask Mr. Valerio, Douglas said. You took it upon yourself to access his property without permission. I didn't access anything, Brenda said. My guests did. You gave them the code, I said. A code that you obtained by pretending to be my wife. Brenda's face went red. That's a lie. I never said I was your wife. Patricia cleared her throat. I spoke directly with the office manager at Desert Oasis Pool Service. She confirmed that someone calling from a number registered to you, Mrs. Hawthorne, claimed to be Mrs. Valerio and requested the pool access code. The office manager, believing she was speaking to Mr. Valerio's wife, provided the code. The room went silent. Brenda looked around at the other board members, and I could see the panic starting to set in. That's a misunderstanding, she said. I called on behalf of Ryan. He asked me to. That's a lie, I said firmly. I never asked you to do anything. I barely know you beyond the violation notices you've sent me. Another board member, a woman named Cheryl, spoke up. Brenda, this is serious. If you impersonated Mr. Valerio's wife to obtain private information, that's fraud. It's also a massive violation of our HOA policies. I didn't impersonate anyone, Brenda insisted, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. I'm being attacked for trying to do something nice. You didn't do something nice, I said. You violated my privacy. You trespassed on my property, or at least enabled others to trespass, and you lied to a business to get information you had no right to have. And then when I complained about it, you started sending me false violation notices as retaliation. Those notices are legitimate. Brenda said quickly. They're not, I said. I pulled out my phone and showed the photos I'd taken. My fence is the correct height. My house numbers are clearly visible. You're abusing your position on this board to harass me. Douglas took the phone from me and looked at the photos. He passed it to Cheryl, who looked at them and then at Brenda with obvious disapproval. Mrs. Hawthorne, Patricia said, I'm going to recommend to this board that you be removed from your position as vice president, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm recommending that you be removed from the board entirely pending a full investigation into whether you've abused your position in other ways. Brenda stood up so quickly her chair fell over backward. You can't do this. I've been on this board for 6 years. I've done more for this community than anyone. You've abused your power, Douglas said quietly. That's unacceptable. I want a vote, Brenda demanded. Right now, let the board decide. Patricia looked at the other board members. All in favor of removing Mrs. Hawthorne from her position as vice president and suspending her from the board pending investigation, raise your hand. Douglas raised his hand immediately, so did Cheryl. The other 2 board members, after a moment of hesitation, also raised their hands. It was unanimous. Brenda looked around the room in disbelief. This is insane. You're all making a huge mistake. Ryan is the problem here, not me. He's uncooperative, he's selfish, and he doesn't understand what it means to be part of a community. This meeting is over for you, Mrs. Hawthorne, Patricia said firmly. Please leave. No, Brenda said. I'm not leaving. This is my community too. Patricia pulled out her phone. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll call the police and have you removed for disrupting an official HOA meeting. For a moment I thought Brenda was going to refuse. Her face was purple with rage, and her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. But finally, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center, slamming the door behind her so hard that one of the bulletin boards fell off the wall. After she left, the tension in the room decreased immediately. Douglas apologized to me on behalf of the board, and Patricia assured me that they'd be reviewing all of the violation notices Brenda had issued over the past year to see if there were any other instances of abuse. I left the meeting feeling like I'd won, but also feeling strangely hollow. I didn't want to be at war with my neighbor. I just wanted to live my life in peace. But Brenda wasn't done. The next morning I woke up to find that someone had toilet papered my front yard. It was juvenile and petty, but it was also clearly a message. I cleaned it up and added another camera to my front yard security system. That afternoon I got a call from Desert Oasis Pool Service. The manager apologized profusely for giving out my code and assured me it would never happen again. They also offered me 3 months of free pool service as an apology. I accepted. Things were quiet for a few days. Then, on the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I'd kicked Brenda's guests out of my pool, I saw something that made my blood boil. I was sitting in my living room working on my laptop when I glanced out the back window and saw movement by my pool. I immediately pulled up the camera feed on my phone and watched in disbelief as Brenda herself punched in a code at my gate and entered my pool area. She'd somehow gotten my new code. I watched on my phone as she walked around my pool, looking at the equipment, the deck furniture, the landscaping. Then, she pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. I didn't know what she was planning, but I knew it wasn't good. I quietly went out my back door and approached the pool gate from the side where she couldn't see me. I waited until she was focused on taking a picture of my pool pump before I spoke. "What are you doing?" She jumped and spun around, her hand going to her chest. "You scared me. You're trespassing," I said. "How did you get my code?" She recovered quickly, her expression shifting from startled to defiant. "I have a right to inspect properties in this neighborhood. As a long-standing member of the HOA, I'm entitled to ensure that all homeowners are following community guidelines." "You were removed from the board," I said. "You have no authority here, and even if you did, you'd need to notify me in advance and schedule an inspection during reasonable hours. You can't just break into my backyard." "I didn't break in," she said. "I have the code." "How?" I asked. "I changed it." She pressed her lips together and didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and called the police. Brenda's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Reporting a trespasser," I said. "You can't call the police on me," she said, but there was a note of panic in her voice now. "Watch me." The dispatcher answered, and I calmly explained that someone had entered my property without permission and was refusing to leave. Brenda tried to walk past me to the gate, but I stepped in front of her. "You're not leaving until the police get here," I said. "You can't hold me here," she said. "That's false imprisonment." "I'm not holding you," I said. "You can climb over the fence if you want. But if you try to go through this gate, I will physically block you." She looked around, clearly trying to figure out what to do. Finally, she sat down on one of my pool loungers with her arms crossed, looking like a petulant child. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers came around to the back gate, and I let them in. One of them, a young woman named Officer Martinez, asked me to explain what was happening. I told her everything, the history with Brenda, the board meeting, and how I'd just found her in my backyard taking pictures. The other officer, an older man named Officer Chen, asked Brenda for her side of the story. "I'm conducting an HOA inspection," Brenda said. "This man is being unreasonable." "Do you have authorization from the HOA to conduct inspections?" Officer Martinez asked. Brenda hesitated. "I'm a longtime board member. Were you authorized by the current board to be here today?" Officer Chen asked. "I don't need authorization," Brenda said. "I know the community guidelines." Officer Martinez looked at me. "Do you want to press charges for trespassing?" I thought about it. Part of me did. Part of me wanted to throw the book at Brenda for everything she'd done, but another part of me just wanted this to be over. "I want her to leave and never come back," I said. "If she does, then yes, I'll press charges." Officer Chen nodded and turned to Brenda. "Madam, you need to leave this property immediately. If you come back without the owner's explicit permission, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Do you understand?" Brenda stood up stiffly. "This is harassment. He's the one who should be arrested." "For what?" Officer Martinez asked. "For being hostile and uncooperative with the HOA," Brenda said. Officer Martinez and Officer Chen exchanged a look. "That's not a crime, madam," Officer Chen said. "Now please leave before we have to take further action." Brenda walked to the gate, shooting me a look of pure hatred as she passed. I watched her leave, followed by the officers who made sure she actually left my property. After they were gone, I sat down in the same lounger Brenda had been sitting on and put my head in my hands. This was getting out of control. I needed to figure out how she'd gotten my new code, and I needed to make sure it didn't happen again. I called the pool company again and asked if anyone had requested my code in the past week. They confirmed that no one had. Then I checked with the company that manufactured my smart gate lock. After going through security questions, they were able to tell me that my code had been accessed through the master admin panel 3 days ago. Who accessed it? I asked. The access log shows it was done through your account, the representative said. My stomach dropped. My account was hacked? It appears so, the representative said. I'd recommend changing your password immediately and enabling two-factor authentication. I did exactly that. Then I changed the pool code again, and I changed every other code on my property. I also started going through my email and other accounts, looking for any signs of unauthorized access. That's when I found it. Buried in my spam folder was an email from 3 weeks ago that looked like it was from the gate lock company, asking me to verify my account information. I'd ignored it because I got dozens of phishing emails a week. But this one had been convincing enough that if I'd been less careful, I might have clicked on it. I forwarded the email to the gate lock company's security team and explained what had happened. They confirmed it was a phishing attempt and thanked me for reporting it. But it didn't answer the question of how Brenda had gotten access to my account, unless she hadn't. Unless someone else had hacked my account and Brenda had somehow convinced them to give her the code. Or maybe she'd bought it from them. It was impossible to know for sure. I called Patricia and told her what had happened. She was appalled. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," she said. "This has gone way beyond what's acceptable. I'm going to recommend that the board pursue legal action against Mrs. Hawthorne." "I might pursue it myself," I said. "This is harassment at this point." "You'd be well within your rights," Patricia said. "In the meantime, I've been doing that investigation I mentioned. We've found several other instances where Mrs. Hawthorne appears to have abused her position. She issued violation notices to 3 different homeowners who had filed complaints against her in the past. She also appears to have accessed confidential homeowner information without proper authorization at least a dozen times in the past year." "What kind of information?" I asked. "Contact details, financial information related to HOA dues, security system details. She's been using her board access to get information she has no legitimate reason to have." I felt sick. "Has anyone else been affected the way I have?" "Not that we know of," Patricia said. "But we're reaching out to everyone whose information she accessed. There might be more complaints once people know what's been going on." Over the next week, things got worse before they got better. Brenda apparently decided that if she was going down, she was going to take me with her. She posted on the neighborhood Facebook group, claiming that I was a hostile and aggressive person who was making the community unsafe. She said I'd threatened her and her guests, that I'd called the police on her for no reason, and that I was trying to get her kicked out of the neighborhood because I didn't like her. Several of my neighbors who didn't know the full story started giving me suspicious looks when I went out to get my mail. I wanted to respond on Facebook, but Lisa advised me not to. "Don't engage," she said. "It'll just make things worse. The truth will come out." She was right. 2 days later, Patricia posted an official statement from the HOA board explaining that Brenda had been removed from her position due to multiple violations of HOA policies and breaches of homeowner privacy. They didn't name me specifically, but they made it clear that her removal was due to her own actions, not because of any complaints from vindictive neighbors. The tide turned quickly after that. People started commenting on Brenda's post, calling her out for lying. Several other homeowners came forward with their own stories of questionable violation notices and invasive behavior from Brenda. One woman said Brenda had entered her backyard without permission to inspect her garden. Another said Brenda had called code enforcement on him for a violation that didn't exist. Brenda deleted her post, but screenshots had already been taken. She became a pariah in the neighborhood almost overnight. I actually felt a little bit sorry for her, until I remembered everything she'd put me through. Things finally came to a head 2 weeks after the police had removed Brenda from my property. I was at work when I got a call from Officer Martinez. "Mr. Valerio, this is Officer Martinez with the Phoenix Police Department. Do you have a moment?" "Of course," I said, stepping out of my office into the hallway. "We've been contacted by several of your neighbors regarding Mrs. Hawthorne's behavior. Combined with the incident at your property and the information provided by your HOA, we have enough evidence to pursue charges against her for harassment, fraud, and computer crimes related to the hacking of your gate system." I leaned against the wall. "Computer crimes?" "Yes, sir. If someone gained unauthorized access to your account in order to obtain security codes, that's a crime under Arizona law. Based on the evidence, we believe Mrs. Hawthorne was involved in that access either directly or by hiring someone to do it for her. What happens now? I asked. We'll be arresting Mrs. Hawthorne and charging her with multiple crimes. We wanted to let you know because you'll likely be called as a witness if the case goes to trial. I'll do whatever I need to do, I said. Thank you, Mr. Valerio. We'll be in touch. I went back to my office in a daze. Lisa called me during my lunch break and I told her what had happened. I can't believe it got this far, she said. All of this over a pool. It was never about the pool, I said. It was about control. She couldn't stand that I wouldn't just roll over and let her do whatever she wanted. That evening I got home to find several of my neighbors standing in small groups on the sidewalk, talking in hushed voices. When they saw me, one of them, a man named Greg who lived 4 houses down, walked over. Did you hear? He asked. Hear what? Brenda got arrested this afternoon. Cops showed up with a warrant and everything, took her away in handcuffs. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt like this whole situation had spiraled out of control. But mostly I just felt tired. I heard, I said finally. It's been a long few weeks. Greg nodded. I owe you an apology, man. When Brenda posted that stuff on Facebook, believed her. I didn't know she'd been doing all this crazy stuff. I'm sorry. It's okay, I said. You didn't know. Still, you're a good neighbor. You didn't deserve any of this. I thanked him and went inside. Lisa came over that night with takeout and wine. We sat on my back patio, next to the pool that had started all of this, and finally relaxed for the first time in weeks. It's over, Lisa said, clinking her wine glass against mine. I hope so, I said. But it wasn't quite over yet. The next day, I got a call from Brenda's lawyer. He introduced himself as Thomas Keller and asked if I'd be willing to meet with him and his client. Why, I asked. Mrs. Hawthorne would like to apologize and discuss a resolution to this matter, he said. A resolution? She's willing to pay restitution for any damages or expenses you've incurred, and she'd like to request that you don't testify against her in the criminal proceedings. I almost laughed. Are you serious? Mr. Valerio, my client made some mistakes, but she's not a bad person. She's going through a difficult time, and this has all been blown out of proportion. She committed fraud, harassment, and computer crimes, I said. She gave strangers access to my property. She hacked my security system. She filed false violation reports against me in retaliation. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern of behavior. I understand you're angry, Thomas said. But think about what's best for everyone involved. Mrs. Hawthorne has lived in your community for years. She has roots there. A criminal conviction could destroy her life. She should have thought about that before she decided to violate my privacy and my property rights, I said. I'm going to testify, Mr. Keller. Your client needs to face the consequences of her actions. He tried to argue with me for a few more minutes, but I ended the call. I wasn't interested in making deals with Brenda. She'd had multiple opportunities to do the right thing, and she'd chosen not to. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a month later. In the meantime, Brenda was released on bail with the condition that she stay away from me and my property. She apparently decided that meant staying away from the entire neighborhood because I heard through the grapevine that she'd moved in with her sister in Scottsdale. The hearing itself was anticlimactic. Brenda's lawyer tried to argue that the charges should be dropped because his client had no prior criminal record and had acted out of a misguided sense of community responsibility. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman named Jennifer Adams, systematically destroyed every argument. She presented evidence of the phone call Brenda had made to the pool service company, where she'd pretended to be my wife. She presented logs showing that my gate system account had been accessed from an IP address that was eventually traced back to a computer at Brenda's house. She presented testimony from other homeowners about Brenda's pattern of abuse of her HOA position. By the end of it, even Brenda's lawyer looked defeated. The judge ordered that the case proceed to trial, but there never was a trial. 3 weeks later, Brenda's lawyer called the prosecutor and negotiated a plea deal. Brenda would plead guilty to fraud, harassment, and unauthorized computer access. In exchange, she'd receive probation instead of jail time, but she'd have to pay restitution to me and anyone else who'd been affected by her actions, complete anger management counseling, and stay away from the neighborhood for the duration of her probation. I was fine with that. I didn't want to see Brenda go to jail. I just wanted her out of my life. The restitution hearing was another matter. Brenda's lawyer tried to argue that I hadn't suffered any actual damages beyond the cost of changing my security codes, which amounted to less than $200. Jennifer, the prosecutor, disagreed. She pointed out that I'd had to spend time and money securing my property, that I'd suffered emotional distress, and that I'd had to take time off work to deal with police reports and HOA meetings. She also noted that the pool service company had provided 3 months of free service as an apology, which suggested they recognized that actual damages had occurred. The judge agreed and ordered Brenda to pay me $5,000 in restitution. It was more than I'd expected but less than my actual costs if I calculated all the time and stress I'd been through. After the hearing, Jennifer approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "I want to thank you for being willing to testify," she said. "A lot of people in your situation would have just let it go." "I couldn't let it go," I said. "She needed to face consequences." "Well, she did, thanks to you." I saw Brenda one more time at the final hearing where the judge formally accepted her plea deal. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When she left the courtroom, she glanced in my direction, but I couldn't read her expression. I didn't try. After that, life slowly returned to normal. The HOA board appointed a new vice president, a retired accountant named Robert who seemed determined to run things by the book. Patricia implemented new policies about board member access to homeowner information. The neighborhood Facebook group banned posts about specific neighbors after the drama with Brenda. Lisa and I actually got engaged that fall. I proposed on the back patio, next to the pool that had inadvertently changed my life. She said yes, and we started planning a wedding for the following summer. My brother Marcus came to visit for Thanksgiving and we sat by the pool drinking beer and catching up. "So this is the famous pool," he said, looking around. "Caused you a lot of trouble." "Worth it though," I said. "I mean, not the trouble, but standing up to Brenda was worth it." "You think she learned anything?" Marcus asked. I thought about it. I don't know, maybe. But even if she didn't, other people did. The HOA changed their policies. The board is more careful now, and people in the neighborhood know that they can stand up to bullies, even if those bullies are in positions of authority. "That's pretty philosophical for a fight about a pool," Marcus said. I laughed. "Yeah, I guess it is." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple, just like it had been on the night I discovered Brenda's guests in my pool. But this time I felt at peace. The pool was mine, my property was secure. And I'd learned that sometimes standing up for yourself is hard and messy and exhausting, but it's also necessary. That Sunday I decided to do something I'd been thinking about for a while. I invited Greg and a few of the other neighbors over for a pool party. Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and cold drinks and people enjoying the water. Greg brought his kids, two little boys who couldn't have been more than 6 and 8 years old. They were nervous at first, asking if it was really okay for them to swim in my pool. "Of course it is," I said. "I invited you, didn't I?" They spent the next 2 hours having the time of their lives, cannonballing into the deep end and playing Marco Polo. Their dad apologized multiple times for them being too loud or splashing too much, but I waved him off. "This is what a pool is for," I said, "to be enjoyed." Lisa arrived later with a homemade potato salad that everyone raved about. She fit right in with my neighbors, laughing and chatting like she'd known them for years. I watched her from across the patio and felt a surge of gratitude for everything I had: the house, the pool, the friends, the woman I loved. As the sun started to set and people began packing up to leave, Greg pulled me aside. "Thanks for this, man," he said. "After everything that happened with Brenda, it's nice to have something positive in the neighborhood." "Thanks for coming," I said. After everyone left, Lisa and I cleaned up the patio together. She was humming as she collected paper plates and plastic cups, and I found myself smiling. "What?" she asked when she caught me looking at her. "Nothing," I said. "I'm just happy." "Good," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "You deserve to be." That night, I stood at my back window looking out at the pool. The lights were on, making the water glow an ethereal blue in the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened: Brenda, the harassment, the legal battles, the stress and anger and fear, and I thought about how it had all started with such a simple thing. Someone using my pool without permission. It would have been easy to let it go, to shrug it off and tell myself it wasn't worth the fight. A lot of people probably would have done exactly that. But I'd chosen to stand up for myself, to set boundaries and enforce them, even when it was hard, even when it made me unpopular, even when it escalated beyond what I'd ever imagined. And I'd do it again because at the end of the day it wasn't really about the pool. It was about respect. It was about not letting someone walk all over you just because they think they have the authority to do so. It was about recognizing that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hard thing to do. I thought about Brenda sometimes. I wondered if she was doing okay, if she'd learned anything from what had happened. I hoped she had. I hoped she'd take the anger management classes seriously and figure out why she felt the need to control everyone around her. But whether she did or not wasn't my responsibility. I'd done what I needed to do. The restitution check arrived in December, just before Christmas. $5,000 made out to Ryan Valerio, signed by Brenda Hawthorne in cramped handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before depositing it in my bank account. Lisa and I used some of the money for our honeymoon fund. The rest went toward upgrading the security system on my property: better cameras, better locks, better monitoring. Not because I was paranoid, but because I'd learned the value of protecting what was mine. The HOA held their annual meeting in January. I attended, something I'd never done before all of this happened. Robert, the new vice president, gave a report on the changes they'd implemented. There were new policies about homeowner privacy, new checks and balances on board member authority, new procedures for issuing violation notices. Several of these changes had been implemented directly because of what had happened with Brenda. After the meeting, Patricia approached me. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm good," I said. "Really good, actually. I'm glad," she said. "What happened with Mrs. Hawthorne was unfortunate, but I think the community is better for it. We needed those policy changes. Sometimes it takes something bad to make something good happen," I said. She nodded. "Have you had any problems since she left?" "None," I said. "It's been peaceful." And it had been. The neighborhood felt different now, lighter, somehow. People were friendlier, more willing to talk and get to know each other. The drama with Brenda had, in a weird way, brought the community together. We'd all been reminded that we were neighbors, not just people who happened to live near each other. Spring came to Phoenix the way it always did, with wildflowers blooming in the desert and temperatures perfect for being outside. Lisa and I spent most weekends by the pool, reading and relaxing and planning our wedding. We'd decided on a small ceremony at a vineyard in Sedona, just family and close friends. One Saturday in April, I was cleaning the pool when I heard someone calling my name from the front yard. I walked around the house to find a woman I didn't recognize standing on my driveway. She was probably in her 30s, with long brown hair and a nervous expression. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Are you Ryan Valerio?" she asked. "I am. My name is Amanda. I'm Brenda Hawthorne's daughter." I felt my body tense. "Okay, I wanted to come by and apologize," she said quickly. "For everything my mother did. I know it's not my place, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. What she did was wrong, and I'm ashamed that she put you through all of that." I didn't know what to say. This was the last thing I'd expected. "Your mother is the one who owes me an apology," I said finally. "Not you." "I know," Amanda said. "But she's not going to give you one. She's still convinced that she was in the right and everyone else was wrong. That's just who she is. But I'm not like that, and I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family thinks what she did was okay." I studied her for a moment. She seemed sincere. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means something." She nodded. "I also wanted to let you know that she's moving. She and my dad are selling the house and relocating to Oregon to be near my brother, so you won't have to worry about running into her anymore." "That's probably for the best," I said. "It is," Amanda agreed. "For everyone." She left after that, and I stood in my driveway for a long time, processing the conversation. I felt a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. Brenda was leaving. The chapter was truly closing. I told Lisa about it that evening over dinner. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Relieved," I said. "And glad that it's over." "It's been over," she pointed out. "I know. But this feels like the final page, you know? She's leaving. Moving on. We can all move on." Lisa raised her wine glass. "To moving on." I clinked my glass against hers. "To moving on. The wedding was beautiful. We got married in late June, surrounded by red rocks and blue sky, with our families and friends bearing witness. My brother Marcus was my best man, and Lisa's sister Emily was her maid of honor. During the reception, Marcus gave a speech that had everyone laughing, including a joke about how I'd fought harder to protect my pool than most people fight to protect their country. "But seriously," he said, raising his glass, "Ryan showed all of us that it's worth standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you. That's the kind of man he is, and that's why Lisa is lucky to have him." Everyone cheered and drank, and I felt my throat tighten with emotion. We honeymooned in Hawaii, 2 weeks of beaches and relaxation and not thinking about HOAs or Karrens or property disputes. When we got back to Phoenix in July, tanned and happy and ready to start our married life together, the house felt like a fresh start. Lisa had been spending more and more time at my place anyway, but now she moved in officially. We combined our furniture, hung her art on the walls, and made the house feel like ours instead of just mine. She even claimed half of the closet in the master bedroom, though she swore she'd try not to take over the entire thing. One evening in August, we had our first party as a married couple. We invited both of our families, plus friends from work and several of the neighbors. The house was full of people, laughter echoing through the rooms and spilling out into the backyard. Kids were swimming in the pool while adults stood around chatting and drinking. I found myself standing at the edge of the patio watching the scene with a sense of contentment I hadn't felt in a long time. Greg came over with a beer in hand and stood next to me. "This is nice," he said. "It is," I agreed. "You know, when you first moved in, I thought you were going to be one of those people who kept to themselves, never talked to anyone, never got involved. But you've turned out to be one of the best neighbors on this street." "Thanks," I said. "That means a lot." "I mean it," Greg said. "What happened with Brenda was crazy, but you handled it the right way. You stood up for yourself without being a jerk about it. That takes character." After Greg walked away, Lisa came up and slipped her arm around my waist. "Happy?" she asked. "Very," I said. No regrets about buying a house with a pool in an HOA neighborhood? I laughed, maybe a few, but mostly no. This is home. And it was. Despite everything that had happened, despite the stress and the drama and the legal battles, I wouldn't change it. Because I'd learned something important about myself through all of it. I was stronger than I thought. I could stand up to bullies. I could fight for what was mine without becoming the bad guy. The HOA sent out a newsletter in September highlighting the policy changes they'd made over the past year. My situation wasn't mentioned by name, but it was clear that everything, the new privacy protections, the revised violation notice procedures, the oversight of board member actions had come about because of what happened with Brenda. I felt a sense of pride reading through it. Something good had come from something bad. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Brenda and her husband had finally sold their house in October. A young couple with a baby moved in, and they threw a housewarming party that Lisa and I attended. They were friendly and normal and seemed genuinely excited to be part of the community. I didn't mention the previous owners, and neither did anyone else. That chapter was closed. As the year came to an end, Lisa and I hosted a New Year's Eve party at our house. We invited everyone who'd become important to us over the past year, neighbors, friends, family. At midnight, as fireworks exploded in the distance and everyone cheered and kissed their loved ones, I held Lisa close and thought about everything we'd been through. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How lucky I am," I said. "How this whole crazy year brought us closer together. How I met half these people because of what happened with Brenda. So you're saying we should thank her?" Lisa teased. "Absolutely not," I said, making her laugh. But in a strange way there was some truth to it. The situation with Brenda had forced me to engage with my community in a way I might not have otherwise. It had brought me closer to my neighbors, made me more involved in the HOA, and taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself. It had also shown me who my real friends were and who would have my back when things got difficult. Winter in Phoenix was mild and beautiful. Lisa and I spent our evenings sitting by the pool heater, wrapped in blankets and talking about our future. We talked about maybe having kids someday, about whether we'd stay in this house or eventually move somewhere bigger. We talked about our careers, our dreams, our hopes. "Do you think you'll ever be able to use the pool without thinking about what happened?" Lisa asked one night. I looked at the water, glowing blue in the darkness. "I don't think about it as much anymore. And when I do, it's not with anger. It's more like remembering a war story, you know, something hard that I got through." "That's a good way to look at it," she said. "Besides," I added, "we've made so many good memories here now. Pool parties, lazy Sundays, teaching Greg's kids to dive. The good stuff is starting to outweigh the bad." And it was true. The pool had stopped being a symbol of conflict and had become what it was always meant to be. A source of enjoyment and relaxation. A place where friends and family gathered. A feature of my home that I was proud of. In February, I got a call from Jennifer Adams, the prosecutor who'd handled Brenda's case. "I wanted to let you know that Mrs. Hawthorne successfully completed her anger management program," she said. "She's also paid restitution to all affected parties and has complied with all terms of her probation." "That's good," I said. "I hope she learned something from it." "I do too," Jennifer said. "These cases can go either way. Sometimes people take responsibility and grow from their mistakes. Sometimes they just get bitter. I don't know which way Mrs. Hawthorne will go, but at least she's done what the court required of her." After I hung up, I told Lisa about the call. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Neutral, I guess. I'm glad she's doing what she's supposed to do, but I don't really care beyond that. She's not part of my life anymore." "Good," Lisa said. "That's healthy." Spring came again, marking a full year since the incident that had started everything. The neighborhood was getting ready for the annual block party, and this year Lisa and I had volunteered to help organize it. We spent weekends coordinating with neighbors, planning activities, and making sure everyone felt included. The block party was in late April, on a Saturday when the weather was perfect. There must have been 100 people there, filling the street with tables, chairs, and laughter. Kids rode their bikes and played games while adults talked and ate and enjoyed the sunshine. Robert, the HOA vice president, made a short speech thanking everyone for being part of such a wonderful community. He mentioned how much the neighborhood had grown and improved over the past year, how people were more engaged and more connected. "We've been through some challenges," he said, carefully not mentioning Brenda by name, "but we've come out stronger. This is what community looks like. People taking care of each other, looking out for each other, and yes, respecting each other's boundaries and privacy." Everyone clapped, and I felt Lisa squeeze my hand. Later that evening, after the block party had wound down and we'd cleaned up the street, Lisa and I sat on our back patio with glasses of wine. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe we should get a dog." I looked at her in surprise. "A dog?" "Yeah. We've got the yard for it, and the pool would be perfect for a dog that likes to swim. Plus, I think it would be nice to have that kind of companionship." I thought about it. The idea of a dog running around the backyard, jumping in the pool, being part of our little family was appealing. "What kind of dog?" I asked. "I was thinking maybe a Labrador. They love water." "Let's do it," I said. We adopted a yellow Labrador puppy in May. We named him Cooper, and he was everything we'd hoped for and more. He was energetic and loving and absolutely obsessed with the pool. By summer, he was jumping in multiple times a day, swimming laps and retrieving toys from the bottom. Watching Cooper play in the pool made me realize how far I'd come from that evening over a year ago, when I'd discovered strangers swimming in my backyard. That moment had felt like a violation, an invasion of my space and my privacy. But I'd handled it, stood up for myself, and come out the other side stronger and more confident. The pool was truly mine now, in every sense of the word. Not just legally, but emotionally. I'd fought for it, I'd protected it, and now I got to enjoy it with the people and the dog I loved. On a warm evening in June, Lisa and I hosted a small anniversary dinner party to celebrate 1 year of marriage. It was just our closest friends and family, sitting around our patio table, eating good food and telling stories. Marcus stood up at one point and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said. "To Ryan and Lisa, who've shown us all what it means to build a life together. And to Ryan specifically, who taught us that sometimes the right thing to do is stand your ground, even over something as simple as a pool." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. "Seriously though," Marcus continued, "I'm proud of you, little brother. You handled a difficult situation with grace and determination. You didn't back down, but you also didn't become the kind of persons who'd do what was done to you. That takes integrity." I felt emotion welling up in my chest. "Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. And Lisa," Marcus said, turning to my wife, "thank you for standing by him through all of that craziness. You're good people." We drank and ate and laughed late into the night. Cooper lay at my feet under the table, occasionally getting up to beg for scraps. The pool lights glowed behind us, reflecting off the water in dancing patterns. As I looked around at the faces of the people I loved, in the home I'd made, by the pool I'd fought for, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not for what had happened with Brenda that had been awful and stressful and something I wouldn't wish on anyone, but for what had come from it. The friendships, the lessons, the growth. I'd learned that I was capable of more than I thought. That I could stand up to authority figures when they were wrong. That I could navigate difficult situations without losing myself. That I could fight for what was mine without becoming bitter or vengeful. And I'd learned that home wasn't just a place. It was the people you shared it with, the memories you made there, the stands you took to protect it. My home was Lisa and Cooper in this house with its pool. It was the neighbors who'd become friends. It was the community I'd become part of, for better or worse. As the party wound down and people started heading home, Greg stopped by my chair. "Thanks for inviting us," he said. "The boys had a great time." "Anytime," I said. "You guys are always welcome." "I mean it about the pool too," he said. "If you ever want to share it with the neighborhood, you could charge a small fee and make some extra money." I laughed. "I think I'll keep it private, thanks. I've learned my lesson about letting just anyone use it." Greg laughed too. "Fair enough. Well, thanks again. You're a good neighbor, Ryan." After everyone left, Lisa and I stood at the edge of the pool, watching Cooper paddle around with a floating toy in his mouth. "It's been quite a journey," Lisa said. "It has," I agreed. "But I think we're exactly where we're supposed to be." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Me too," and standing there in my backyard, in my home, by my pool, with my wife and my dog and my hard-won peace of mind, I knew that everything I'd gone through had been worth it. The stress, the conflict, the legal battles, all of it had led me to this moment of perfect contentment. Brenda Hawthorne had tried to take something from me. She'd tried to assert control where she had no right to. She'd crossed boundaries and violated trust and made my life difficult. But in the end, she'd failed. I still had my pool, my home, my dignity, and my peace. I had friendships I might never have made and a marriage that had been tested and strengthened. I had a community that was better for what we'd all been through. I'd changed that pool code mid-swim and left those towels at the gate. A small act of defiance that had set off a chain of events I never could have predicted. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because standing up for yourself, protecting what's yours, and refusing to be pushed around, those things matter. They matter more than being liked or being seen as easygoing or avoiding conflict. Sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand and say, "This is mine, and you can't have it." And when you do that, when you stand your ground with integrity and determination, you discover who you really are. I'm Ryan Valerio, and this is my home. This is my pool. And no HOA Karren, no matter how entitled or aggressive, was ever going to take that away from me.